This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. More questions than answers after a 23-year-old trainee journalist and a deputy police commissioner died during protests in Nigeria.
The loss of a young colleague would only but dampen the spirit, of everyone that knew him.
Sending them back fast. The U.S. brings in new rules for undocumented migrants. What will it mean for those from Africa? Claims that some of the poorest countries in Africa are losing out on millions of dollars in tax revenues from Western multinationals. Also in the program, champion in a chair. The Somali basketball superstar who's shooting to success.
I remember when the consultant came over and my mom was there, you had psychologists, all these other people was there, and they told me that I couldn't walk, and my first reaction was, okay, I'm actually lucky to be alive.
And in sports, fresh from their victory at the just concluded Africa Cup of Nations, Algeria duo Yassin Brahimi and Mehdi Abeid join new clubs. Well, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Questions are being raised about what exactly happened on Monday during clashes between police and a Shia Muslim group in Nigeria. In particular, the killing of a 23-year-old journalist and a deputy police commissioner. It happened during a protest in Abuja by the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, and they claim 11 of their protesters were killed. The IMN is a Shia group who are demanding the release of their leader, Sheikh Al-Zakzaky, who was detained in 2015. Nigeria's head of defense staff has condemned the clashes.
What ought to have been a peaceful protest had been derailed by some criminals amongst the Islamic movement in Nigeria group to begin to unleash mayhem on innocent Nigerians.
Well, let's bring in the BBC's Ishaq Khalidi, who's been following developments for us in Abuja. Ishaq, we've heard there from the military, but it appears the protesters are undeterred.
Yeah, exactly, Sophie, because the Shia members came out again today to protest on the streets to demand the release of their leader, but they were dispersed by the security forces. The protest today was not as violent as yesterday. Yesterday, as you said, a number of people were killed on the side of the Shia members and also on the police side. On the side of the Nigeria police, a deputy commissioner of police, Usman Umar, was killed. And then there was also a journalist who was killed. He was working with the television station channels. It's not clear how they were killed, but they were injured during the clashes, and then they later died in the hospital. The police are alluding that the Shia members were responsible for the death, but the Shia members, the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, are saying that they were not responsible. They distanced themselves from the injuries that led to the death of these people, and they're even saying that the police were responsible. The authorities are saying investigations are being conducted, so we wait and see what will be unraveled in the course of this investigation to see how and why, how these people were killed.
And as we wait for these investigations, we understand that the Channels Television, the trainee journalist, has been speaking out over what happened yesterday, Ishaq.
Yeah, exactly. Channels Television has spoken out, paid tribute to the young journalist Precious Awolabi, and Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari himself has also paid tribute, saying that he was saddened and also vowed to, make sure that the government doesn't tolerate violence. And he said that Nigeria or the government will not allow its will to be tested. The Channels Television has this tribute for the young journalist.
Precious was not actually the reporter on duty. There was somebody who was assigned to cover that that situation. He wasn't actually assigned to it, but he volunteered that he wanted to be part of it. He wanted to see how this is covered. And he really wasn't in the eye of the storm, and I like to make this quite clear, that he was far off from the eye of the storm, you know what I mean. And of course, there were sporadic gunshots, and the stray bullet, unfortunately, hit him.
Well, Ishaq, we know that the protesters are demanding the release of the sheikh, but many are wondering why he hasn't been released even after orders have been given.
Well, so far the Shia members are saying that he should be released because there was a court order, or there were court orders for his release. But the Nigerian authorities are saying that the issue is still in court. The Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaki is still facing trial in a court in Kaduna State, where the violence that led to his arrest in 2015 took place. But the Shia members are saying that there was a court order that said he should be released. So for now, we can say that the hostility between the Nigerian authorities and the Shia members remains unresolved. And they say that they are determined to continue protesting until their leader is released. But the Nigerian authorities are saying they are not going to tolerate any violence. And the president is saying that the will of his government will not be allowed to be tested. So we are still watching. And Nigerians are so concerned, saying that this matter should be handled carefully. And then there should be caution on both sides, the side of the authorities and the Shia members, so that the situation doesn't degenerate, looking at the fact that Nigeria has a lot of other security challenges, but it is battling with the Boko Haram, the banditry, and kidnappings and other security challenges. Caution needs to be taken. That is what many Nigerians are saying at this moment.
All right, Ishaq Khalid for us there in Abuja. Thank you. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. A Kenyan court has released the finance minister, Henry Rotich, on a $140,000 cash bail after he pleaded not guilty to corruption charges relating to two controversial dam projects. Mr. Rotich is accused alongside 25 other senior officials. The Kenyan authorities plan to extradite the director of the Italian construction firm at the center of the scandal. In Zimbabwe, the government has announced plans to offer free treatments to cancer patients. The Health and Childcare Minister told the state-run ZBC radio that cancer has become the main cause of death in the country, overtaking HIV and AIDS. Now in the UK, Boris Johnson has been elected the new leader of the governing Conservative Party. Now, the former mayor of London will take over from the current Prime Minister Theresa May tomorrow. Mr. Johnson has pledged that the UK will leave the European Union on the 31st of October, regardless of a no-deal outcome. The President of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, and the Ghanaian President, Nana Akufo-Addo, have congratulated Mr. Johnson. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. So goes the poem written on the Statue of Liberty, as some in the United States may be questioning that sentiment today as the government brings in a new fast-track deportation process which could have a serious and immediate impact on African immigrants. Now, up to now, only those immigrants detained within the 160 kilometers of the border who'd been in the country 2 weeks or less could be deported quickly. Now, under the new rules, any undocumented immigrants who've been in the U.S. for less than 2 years could be deported immediately, no matter where they are caught, with no access to immigration lawyers. And immigrants will need to prove that they've been in the country for 2 years or more. Now, there are around 250,000 illegal immigrants from sub-Saharan African countries living in the States. That's according to the 2017 estimate. Between 2016 and 2018, the number of removals of people from the 10 African countries with the most illegal immigrants in the U.S. has more than doubled. Well, joining us from New York is Sion Gurmu. She is a legal advisor at the migrant rights organization, Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Help us understand why the rules have changed now.
So this administration has put into effect what you just described, which is the Asylum Ban Part 2, as we call it. They claim that an increase in asylum seekers at the southern border has basically overwhelmed the U.S. asylum system, making this rule necessary. There's a narrative about loopholes being exploited by immigrants, including Black migrants, in order to access the asylum system here in the U.S. However, it's clear to us at BAJI and our partner organizations that the actual purpose is to prevent asylum seekers from having any opportunity to pursue their claims here in the U.S.
So what is the recourse here? What could you do as an organization at the moment? Because the rules are being applied.
So currently, there have been legal challenges that have already been made to this new Asylum Ban Part 2. At BAJI, we're working both at the southern border and here within the U.S. to receive Black migrants. So we know that there has been a great increase in the number of Black migrants at the southern border. And so we're providing legal support and humanitarian support to those individuals there. And then once folks are permitted into the United States, we're providing direct legal representation for them to defend their asylum claims in court.
How do you prove that you've been there for at least more than 2 years, especially within the group that you're dealing with?
So there are a number of ways that folks demonstrate their presence here in the United States. Some standard ways are showing education documents that show that you've been enrolled in some sort of institution, health documents, legal documents also provided by attorneys like myself who've been working with Black migrants from the moment that they entered the United States. We help support those claims in a number of ways.
Right, so just one very, very quick question to you, because the issues of deportation have to do with two countries. For example, if the U.S. has to deport people, they have to deal with the countries of origin. What are the challenges there, especially if the country of origin is in a conflict situation?
Yes, that's an excellent point. Many Black migrants that are attempting to enter the United States are fleeing political repression, ethnic conflict, various forms of persecution based on their gender identity or sexual identity. So the threat of returning those individuals to countries where their lives are an imminent harm is obviously something that we greatly fear. So that is why, in addition to seeking asylum protection, there's also the possibility of withholding of removal and protections under the Convention Against Torture, all of which are forms of protection that we seek for Black migrants that we're protecting and fighting to remain here in the U.S.
All right, Sion Gurmu, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you. Now, a new investigation has shed light on how some of the poorest countries in Africa are losing out on millions of dollars in tax revenues from Western multinationals and wealthy individuals. Now, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists says companies and individuals use the island nation of Mauritius to legally avoid paying higher taxes in the countries where they make their money. Now, Mauritius denies any wrongdoing. The Executive Director of Tax Justice Network Africa, Alvin Musioma, gave his analysis to the BBC's Money Daily program.
The way it has managed to position itself in the continent is through the double tax agreements that they have become very well known for. And they have over 46 double tax agreements that they have signed with a number of countries, largely in Africa. And this double tax agreement, in essence, they are supposed to help companies not pay tax twice. But because of the Mauritius tax regime, in terms of how Mauritius treats foreign entities that are operating out of Mauritius, what happens out of that is that companies end up not paying tax both in the countries where they're operating, but also in Mauritius, where they register as subsidiaries or headquarters.
But there is no criminality really in this tax avoidance if you look at it from a criminal law perspective, is it?
Well, that's a thin line, basically, to argue about what is criminal and what is not criminal. The thin line, what is tax avoidance and tax evasion. What the end result is the same, that companies, particularly multinational companies operating out of Mauritius, are exploiting the rules, the weak rules that we see in many African countries, to avoid paying their taxes. The result of that is revenue leakage. If that happens through exploitation of the rules or breaking of the rules, the end result is usually the same, that countries are losing the revenue that they actually rightfully own.
Make me understand then how these African countries are allowing or agreeing to these agreements with Mauritius, really briefly.
Well, it's a push and pull. On one side, what we see is that there are particularly interested parties in our own countries that stand to gain in a practice we call round tripping. So you'd find investors, for example, if we were to take Kenya as an instance, you'd find investors who would move out of Kenya, move to Mauritius and register there as foreign entities, and then come back to Kenya to take advantage of that. So what you find happening is that there are well-connected business elites that encourage or push or lobby our governments to sign these kind of double tax agreements to the detriment, of course, of the economies of these countries.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, triumph in adversity, how this Somali man is scoring big as a basketball superstar. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: a 23-year-old trainee journalist and a deputy police commissioner have died during a protest in northern Nigeria. The Islamic Movement for Nigeria says at least 11 of their members were killed in the violence, but authorities have not provided an official death toll. The Trump administration introduces a new fast-track process for deporting illegal immigrants. They will now be required to prove that they've stayed in the country for 2 years continuously or risk immediate deportation with no access to immigration lawyers. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And fresh from their victory at the just concluded Africa Cup of Nations, Algerian duo Yacine Brahimi and Mehdi Abeid have joined new clubs. The pair were free agents, and forward Brahimi has joined Qatari club Al Rayyan, while Abeid, a midfielder, signed for Nantes in France, with both having 3-year deals. Abeid, who is 26, played in all 3 of the Fenex group games in Egypt but did not feature in the knockout phase, while Brahimi, aged 29, made 2 appearances for the Desert Foxes, including one as a substitute as they beat Senegal 1-0 in the final. More transfer news now. One Algeria player who missed out on a place in the victorious Nations Cup team is Soufiane Hani, but he has joined Qatari club Al Gharafa from Russian side Spartak Moscow. The 28-year-old has played 12 times for Algeria. Another player to miss out on the Nations Cup on the move is Senegal defender Papi Djiloboji, who has joined newly promoted Turkish top flight club Gayzaser. Tunisia midfielder Gaylan Haheli has signed a 3-year deal with Turkish club Malatyaspor. Chaleli was part of Tunisia's squad at the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations and the 2018 World Cup. Cameroon midfielder Michael Ngaidu has joined Belgian club Gand on a 4-year deal from Czech champions Slavia Prague. And Senegal international Kari Moboji has left Belgian giants Anderlecht to join Qatari top flight club Al Salia. On a 3-year contract, Mboji has been capped 45 times by Senegal, scoring 5 goals. Now, former Botswana Football Association General Secretary Moketsi Kotletle has been banned for life by FIFA for accepting bribes. Football's world governing body found him guilty of having accepted bribes in relation to the manipulation of international matches. The proceedings against Kotletle began in September last year and stem from an extensive investigation into Wilson Raj, a known match fixer. He's now banned for life from all football-related activities at both national and international level. He was also fined $51,000. Now, Victor Martin was named as the new coach of Mozambique, replacing Abel Xavier, who did not have his contract renewed. It is a belated consequence of Mozambique's failure to qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations finals in Egypt. Mozambique conceded a dramatic goal deep into stoppage time in Guinea-Bissau in their last qualifier in March, which cost them a top 2 place in their group. Martin, who is a physical education teacher, was an assistant to Abel Xavier and also coach of Mozambique's under-23 and under-20 sides. Now, Portuguese soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo will face no charges in Las Vegas in connection with a 10-year-old sexual assault allegation because the case cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt. That's according to prosecutors. Ronaldo, a former FIFA Player of the Year, has always maintained his innocence. The case stems from a June 2009 report from a woman that she had been sexually assaulted. She initially declined to identify the person who she claims assaulted her. The woman and Ronaldo reached a civil settlement in 2010, and law enforcement did not hear from her again until August 2018, when she asked police to reopen the investigations. And Sophie, that's you up to speed with your sports.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. Thank you. Now, there he is. You're looking at a European basketball champion. Abdi Jama's life started as an able-bodied child in the self-declared region of Somaliland. But a family moved to the UK and a freak accident completely changed his life. He's been sharing his story with my colleague Isaac Fanin from the BBC Sport Africa programme.
Abdi Jama left Somalia at the age of 6 years old to escape the civil war there. He moved to Liverpool in England with his family and began to build a new life. But 8 years later, a tragic accident.
I was sitting on a windowsill and basically the window was wide open. There was a curtain over the window. I didn't realise at that time it was a sunny day, it wasn't windy or anything, so the curtain wasn't moving. As I leaned back, I went straight through the window because it was wide open and damaged my back. Woke up 2 weeks later in hospital.
What was it like when you woke up and they told you that you might not be able to walk again? I'm
one of them people that believe in, things happen for a reason. And, even at 14 years old, I was quite mature for my age. So, I remember when the consultant came over and my mum was there, you had psychologists, all these other people was there, and they told me that I couldn't walk. And my first reaction was, okay, I'm actually lucky to be alive. Apparently I died twice in a coma or something. So, I don't remember any of this, but, I was lucky to be alive and I knew that life goes on. A guy came to the school, his name is Adi Arabemi, and he was part of the GB team at that time. He told me, why don't you try, give it a go? And he was like, man, you're good. And seeing this guy do things that I couldn't do was incredible. I could relate to him because a fellow African brother was showing me the ways of how to do stuff.
Abdi's gone on to flourish in the sport, winning pretty much all there is to win in the game.
So do you think you could have achieved anything you achieved like this if you lived in Somalia?
I'd say no. It'd be difficult because just let alone being a sportsman, I think just being a disabled athlete or just being a disabled person, I don't think I would have achieved what I've achieved, even come close to it. Wheelchair basketball changed my life. It made me, appreciate that I could do anything in life, and it gave me a purpose in life. When you play for GB, it's the pinnacle, basically. You get the funding here, the facilities. In Africa, we lag behind this. There's a lot of African teams, including Nigeria. I know Kenya has a team. But even then, the standard is very, very low. And, to get that standard to a level that it should be, you need to see, disabled people as athletes, not just as people that are disabled.
Well, Abdi's story is the latest in our series on disability on the continent. Tomorrow, we'll be in Ghana, where lack of access to transportation is making it difficult for some children to go to school. That's Focus for now. Thanks for your company.